Hey there, data lovers, and welcome to another I Love Data Fridays podcast. This podcast is a follow-up podcast. We got a question, folks. We got a question back about one of our podcasts. And it's a question about our response to the original question about when, where, and how to use the OS total score. This is from the I Love Data Fridays on February the 10th, 2017. Volume number 3, question number 3. So, hey, who's talking data to you? Well, hey, you've got me, Jeff Breimer-Bashore, Director of IT and Operations here at the International Data Evaluation Center, located on the beautiful yet cloudy campuses of The Ohio State University. Folks, let's get right to it. Let's talk about this follow-up question that's got me so excited right now. So could you please pass this along to Jeff? Hey, teacher leaders, just in case if you're wondering if Jeff is reading your emails, I am. They do get passed along. I have just finished watching the I Love Data YouTube session, when, where, and how to use the OS total score. I'm attaching an article I received. Don't know when it was or don't see the date on this publication, titled Why We Should Not Add Scores to Rank Reading Recovery Children by Noel K. Jones from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. I was always under the assumption that we don't add scores for the reasons indicated on this teacher leader resource paper. Have things changed? Thanks. Well, first of all, thank you for sending this great follow-up question. We are happy to talk about it. So let's do it. Let's talk a little data. So I'm going to break this podcast down into addressing 2 questions here. And the first is, what issue is the article addressing? So we're gonna get the article up here, and we're gonna look at the issue that it's specifically addressing. And then, though I'm adding this question, and I admitted that I don't think the teacher leader really is asking me this question, but I thought it's good to throw it in there. Why does IDEC get to add scores together, and teachers should not? So let me pull up that article here. Let me bring over the website. And ladies and gentlemen, I've placed a copy of the article up on our public website under our publications. And let's go to our folder here. Question number 3 on I Love Data Fridays. Here we go. The Why Should We Not Add Scores Together by Noel Jones there. All right, I'm going to download that. I'm also going to download, this is the article that Jerry wrote about, Dr. D'Agostino wrote about the OS total score. Let me get that one. So let me open this up. All right. Why should we not add scores to rank reading recovery children? Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am not going to read the whole article to hear to you on the video. That probably makes for bad podcast viewing, and which is why you can download from the website and look for yourself. But what the article is addressing is that at the time this was written, Noel, who was a reading recovery trainer at one time, was noticing that teachers were taking all 6 tasks of the OS, adding them together to get a score, and then they would select which students to serve first by who got the lowest score. So now, if you remember back to our last video, especially our conversation with Dr. Adria Klein, we talked about the selection process, how it is not about the score, that when teachers are selecting their students, it's a much more complicated task. Not only are we taking data and tracking data on these children, but we are also observing the children and their behaviors in writing. And I think Dr. Jones captures that perfectly right here at the very end. It says, but there is one more very important argument against the use of any numerical shortcut in ranking children. Our aim in reading recovery is to foster teachers' understanding. We want teachers to be reflective, to seek to understand the processing and knowledge indicated by a child's performance, and to look hard for indications of strength. Encouraging a shortcut seems to contradict these professional aims of reading recovery. Because of the inaccuracies that result, it also threatens the integrity of reading recovery's claim that we serve the lowest children first, or we serve the lowest achieving children. So, I could not have stated it any better myself. And this is a great example of once again, someone pointing out why we do not use a cut score on when selecting our children. So to answer the teacher leaders question, no, we are not advocating that teachers are to use a score to select their children. And I'm just going to come out and say it again here. What is the OS total score not used for and why? It is not used for student selection. Do not use it for student selection. And why? It's those reasons that we stated in the last video, that it's not about the data. These quantifiable or quantitative data cannot capture everything that is going on within a child that is sitting next to a teacher when being evaluated for reading recovery. There is qualitative data and observational data that the teacher needs to consider when they are trying to figure out which students to work with first. And once again, though Noel doesn't use it here, but I'm going to say it here, is that it says, do not use this to determine if a student is ready to discontinue. Don't use it as a criteria for discontinuation, because once again, complex process, much more going on than what the quantitative data, our scores on the observation survey can show. So I think that's actually a very good read. I read through Noel's letter there, and it's actually a great letter, and especially his reasons on why not just to add the 6 scores together. And it's worth a quick read and sharing with your teachers. Now, we have the second question here that I've kind of thrown in there. So why does IDEC get to add scores together, and why can't why are we allowed to do it and call it, and then from this raw score create a scale score, which is the total score? And it's because the IDEC has done this in a very thoughtful manner. This wasn't something where somebody sat down and 10 minutes later they came up with the total score. This is where somebody looked at what the observation survey was, what it represented, what characteristics the tests have as a whole. For example, a lot of our assessments, some of our assessments have like ceiling effects, like for example, letter identification. A lot of kids come into first grade knowing most or all of their letters. So everyone is up at the top. We have a ceiling effect. We've taken into account that, letter identification or writing vocabulary is the assessment with the largest score in there. Then, it can have upwards, in our system, we allow up to 200 as a valid score, 200 words known by a child. So these things were sat down, someone very carefully thought about it. And what was nice, when I read through Noel's article, what I wanted to point out, let me see if I can find it here real quick. So what I wanted to point out here is this paragraph right here. Noel goes to say, a third, more important reason is that calculating rank based on a numerical score fails to credit children for knowledge demonstrated by partially correct responses or by telling us what they know and what they don't know. And now this may not be 100%. So right here, he's talking about, sort of like partial credit for answers, and then also, conversation happening with the child right there on the spot. And I'm going to pull over Dr. D'Agostino's article here about the OS total score and where it was used for confirming getting the response to intervention rating. And let me find the paragraph here that I want to look at, and I believe it is down here. So in this paragraph right here, Dr. D'Agostino writes, students' raw scores on all 6 observation survey tasks from fall, mid-year, and year-end were treated as partial credit items in an item response theory analysis. So, the actual analysis itself worries about children demonstrating partial knowledge and partial credit. And it goes on to further state that this one parameter item response theory model fit the data well, indicating that all 6 tasks could be used to develop one common literacy scale. Jerry just didn't create this scale by the scale that we have, which ranges from 0 to 800, is not the possible range of scores that you can get by adding all 6 tasks of the observation survey. He takes the raw score by when you add all of the 6 scores together, and he develops a scale score that helps smooth out some of the sort of the statistical artifacts that you see in the observation survey, because it's a diagnostic tool. These are not standardized scores, they're diagnostic tools. So this is why IDEC gets to add it together to create a scale score, and we can then use the total score. Like I said, what can we use the total score for? What's about is for evaluation. It's not for selecting our students, it's for evaluating our implementations after reading recovery. Remember what I said, it's a data conversation starter. The OS total score takes all of the scores into consideration, and it allows us to actually see on a whole who is starting farther down in the hole or starting more farther up than other children, and who makes the most growth, taking in consideration all of the OS scores. And then you can investigate further by looking at the individual total scores. So ladies and gentlemen, don't rank children by using the OS total score. Don't rank children by simply adding all 6 observation survey scores together. Follow the selection procedures. Observe and test the child, and observe the child, and make sure you're selecting your students based off the full consideration of not only your quantitative data, but your qualitative data. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for watching another I Love Data Fridays podcast, and we'll talk data to you later.